The issue comrades who are engaged on, basically it's on political developments that are ongoing in Swaziland, but we're also reflecting on the utterances issued by the tyrant today in his monologue. So we want to reflect on that, and today we can actually call this day a National Insult Day, sort of something like that. It's a National Insult Day, the day when people are insulted grossly. Of course, the people of Swaziland have been insulted. They've been living under an insult for the past 48 years. But today it's like when you think you have really been insulted to the last end, and the tyrant still has a bag full of more insults. He delivered them today. And basically that is the mood of the people of Swaziland today, that he has gone far beyond. And the people are asking questions though. Where to from here? How do we wage the struggle now? People in Manzini were cleaned out. They were blocked out from getting even into the city, to march, to work, to shop, or do any business that they normally do in the city. They were shut out with the attempts to force people to go to Esbayen. So I had called people to his kraal. The people in their numbers boycotted Sibaya. The only people who were there were the chiefs, the ministers, some of the sycophants that attended that thing. He was literally talking to himself and his puppets. The people today resoundingly rejected Mswati in broad daylight. The evidence is there for all to see. If ever there was any evidence which the likes of SADC, AU, UN, and others wanted to prove as evidence that the people of Swaziland have rejected Inkundla rule, it is today. If they don't see it today, they'll never see it. But also then it gives us, it comes back to us. The task comes back to us, the task of leadership. And as the vanguard part of the working class is looking up to us for direction. Nothing ever happens successfully if it is just spontaneous and unguided, unled. Now that task has fallen squarely on the Communist Party of Swaziland.
Thank you, comrade. Thank you, Comrade Pius, and thank you to all of you who are part of the discussion this evening. Indeed, Comrade, you have introduced very well the situation of our time today on the aspect of the insults from the utterances of the tyrant today. But it is good also to go back and make everyone to be part of our thinking and our feelings about the situation and how do we advance the struggle. I think in one way or another, we will say it was a vindication, but it's important to say it's not only the Communist Party position that the tyrant regime was a mistake in our lives and in our political space, but because we are an organization, we've emphasized it all over the times. But yes, others had some doubts, Some will even think that we want to be ultra-revolutionaries, want to bring revolutionary elements, even if it's unnecessary. The Swazi question can be addressed without the revolution. That was the illusion that some people have been always moving on. And those who have been in this situation, you've seen a lot of many tribes seeking to want to propel a condition as if there is a space for dialogue, the tyrant is involved. But let us just be very specific on the aspect of today, is that what has been a grave danger in the pro-democracy movement was the faction or the factions in the monarchy that could always find space to try to think again, manage the pro-democracy forces. And I think now it is time that we need to expose it and talk about it and explain and relate, because they have never been against the regime, but they were only an element that manages the affairs of the regime, our political affairs. But in fact, they found space within the pro-democracy forces, within individuals, to think there can be arrangement. That's why it was easier for the Commonwealth and also some foreign agencies to try to make a higher influence in the manner at which our revolution could be discussed and should be foreseen. Sometimes it was bringing a lot of false illusion, false signals, where we would say there is a way that Swaziland can be free, now it's closer, things are like this and like that. So almost all the years, this has been the loud cloud of confusion that was brought in by counterinsurgency operational methods. I think we've been subjected, we've been victims. The struggle has been victims of such mentalities. As such, you will find that it will be very difficult for others to accept the realities of today, that the tyrant has come out to clarify where they stand, even though in the previous 3 or so weeks, the brutality, the murder of our people was obvious, that was an attitude. But in some cases, some had to believe the myth of the regime when it says, these were foreign people who have grabbed the army, who have taken uniforms, who sometimes they will claim that they were part and parcel of the pro-democracy forces and trying to create a drama over that. But I think most people knew really we are in that quagmire, we were in this environment. But I think what has surfaced today was that we are in a grave danger to keep, or to say to keep it, I think is that's the ideal, because at the mercy of the survival of the autocracy, it is within us, it is within our people. I was trying to say we are not alone, because it has been clear that the majority of our people in the country are tired of being ruled by family. It is of evidence today that in the course of all the uprisings and the calculated moves that the masses have organized and the masses have participated in, the regime opted to say they can reinforce security in the chiefs. I think that is a very important, significant element to say, keeping feudalism. I learned today that part of the audience Mswati had was contraless the traditional leaders, institutions in South Africa. Because I would think all what constitutes the audience was more of an audience that reinforces, that wanted to maintain a situation, to say, we are with you, we are not alone. They wanted to give Mswati that confidence, where he was, as we have said earlier, we said, the summons of the fiasco will be either a provocation or it should be a platform for us to bury the system. Because those were two conditions. Critically, it was in this way that what is our mentality, what was our own thought? We all knew that it was impossible for the masses to go in and support because of the wounds that the regime has raveled in our population. It's so significant in the sense that if these institutions had to be part of the reinforcements with relationship, this arrangement of today, We have also learned how SADC has advised that this environment must be there. But where we are and how we stand as a population or as a people is that we could see that what is more of a requirement is an organized revolutionary seizure of power. And it is an immediate thing that must be done, and it is urgent because we are in an environment where we are exposed into a system whose leaders are a risk, not only to the human race, but they are a risk into the existence of any environment, any element of environmental species. You couldn't appreciate or couldn't accept to hear insults raveled against the people, but also to be so pompous on that he owns everything in the country. We could also fail to accept that in the midst of the increase of the demands for freedom, he would come in and say, all those people whom were involved have got no space to be talked, to be engaged upon. So he was trying to say there is no space for dialogue with the people fighting for freedom, with all the voices demanding for change in the country. He has also undermined what would have been his loopholes or loose ends. Those who were calling for an elected prime minister, he just simply rebuked them and overturned them. He just simply did in his own way. And then he also says, and he also still thinks that in 2013, he will be establishing his own authoritative a system which the world must accept, as we were speaking about the issue of the election in 2013. So he was only worried about placing a leader or one of his puppets for a short term, but for the long term, he's still confident that he can sustain and can still be in power. But the other elements that are there is that all the conditions and practices and experiences that the people working in the system might have. He has been demanding money from parastatals in millions. And most of the officials there are aware of this development. And he has also appointed his lieutenant, the present Minister of Finance, who is the one now who is in charge, who is controlling the pace, because he's a representative of the crime syndicates, the economic syndicates that are operational in the country. He is the one who is able to fund the mercenaries that he thinks they can defend that authority, because the confidence of Mswati has been based on the capabilities that the tyrants or the mercenaries that he has composed as part and parcel of the security, who are now in charge of the operations of the army and security agencies, or have made him to have the confidence that yes, he has got a force and he has got capabilities in his own hands. It is of that reason that he will not mind of any of what could be vulnerabilities, such as the relationship that we may have with the army personnel, relationship that we should say they are part and parcel of the communities because they've been recruited on the basis of unemployment. They were recruited on the basis of job-seeking elements. He thinks those are there because he is quite aware that the regiment force is one of the worst elements that can sustain and survive. They can only play C than to sustain him in this level. So his confidence was basically based on those kind of mentalities. And truly, as we speak today, our strugglers have not tampered with their institution and their facilities. Their economic livelihood is still active. And it is being active not on the basis that it can sustain or survive the international trade protocols, but because they can survive because they are dealing with dirty money and they're operating under conditions that will always be survived within what they call a safe haven, which we call it our country as a people. So I think those are the practical elements that are surfacing. So we are now exposed to talk about these things and share with them in the very strong element, because truly the mist that has conflicted in our environment, whereby other people as I've said earlier, we have thought that there is no necessity for an organized revolution in the country. There were that element to say, some of them will go to the extent and say, no, they want to emulate communism. There is no position for that in our country and so on. So they were trying to say we are introducing an element of the old that have no survival in our country, in our situation. But I think it is now clear the route for our victory, is to organize effectively a revolution against the tyrant. And this cause of revolution must be sensitive to the elements of the attitude of the regime. In what way? In the sense that the military might, the danger, the killing of the people that we have seen in the street today are only a microcosm and a small element of the attitude. They are a habit, but they've shown how it could go. But it is true, it is clear that in the process of organizing a revolution, we should practically face our analysis on the basis of what is the capabilities, the eventualities of this system that we are fighting today. We must also look at the practicality of the dangers that this system possesses to the life of people, of our people, a threat to life that if not attended, that if a plan can overlook this kind of elements, we may end up in a condition where we'll be stimulators of a civil war, of an angling, of an engagement between the people and right-wing forces, which that is what we have seen now that we are faced with. We are more on a condition similar to fascism. We are in a situation where we have to fight a system of a fascist nature by organization, by orientation, and by purpose. So this system called Inkundla is what it is in our own view now. It is a very serious danger of fascism, as the fascist leader has exposed it and has explained to say it was only the duty or the element of the military that has created a situation which he calls a sober environment. He said so, and he said the army was the only people who could talk, not the political system. So by nature, the political system now is military governed, military coordinated, military sustained. So I think that is a very tricky environment, tricky situation, which says not only on what we have already been organizing to and perceived that will make sense to us. We ask ourselves, how did SADC advise? What confidence did SADC offer to the tyrant? And as you've been saying, that we dispute that it was a fair and honest engagement that SADC has to do. And in particular, because SADC never approached the problem that we have faced. I think that is a serious indictment. Once we organize a revolution, on the key aspects, the environment is one of the critical positions, which are the environmental conditions that we must be discussing in. This environmental condition says a war against the people, and you must wage it, and it must be sustainable. And in this condition, it says it defines a territorial environment, and dealing with many aspects, the land surface, the vegetation, the population, and in particular also our political space, our geopolitical space, where and how do we exist in this world order and in the environment of the region. So all those are aspects that I think need to be identified. The other important aspect will be the sanctuary. it is important to say we are in this war and in this environment without a safe haven, without a safe environment to organize against the tyrant. So I think those are an important position. The other aspect is the issue of foreign assistance. What is the role of foreign forces? Are they with the regime, or if they are progressive forces, how far do they stand with us? Do they give us and offer us the necessary support that we want? What kind of support? A support that will neutralize the attitude of the tyrant, the attitude of the quasi-fascist situation we are facing, the attitude that will say we are in support of these progressive forces and can support them and help them to upgrade their capacity based on their strategy and tactics, not on eventualities of the situation of the conflict, such as humanitarian and so forth. But that will say, practically, let's support, or we are in support of the strategy and tactics of the approach at which these people want to wage their struggle towards victory. It's an important condition that we are in. Also, comrades, in this situation of the organization of where we are, is the dynamics of the revolutionary movement we are in. We have been always in very serious pain about the condition that we exist in, both the legal and illegal organizations. Where and how do we stand as underground political organizations? There is always a temptation, and it has been there in the past, to then organization claim that they've got right to exist when there are no possibilities of even enrolling a membership. There are no possibility also of sustainability if there is no legal existence. But yes, we try to create that illusion that we exist. That's why if you can look at the attitude of PPA, there is always that comfort to want to say we are a political party arrangement. When in essence, without those rights to organize, without that space to survive, without that notion of knowing that we are underground organizations, we fail even to recognize the importance of the existence of the organized formation that have got legal space of existence, which one would be the trade union in the main. The rest probably, like the student organization, still had that space of fighting their legality because in any way, they've got no legal space of existence. So only the trade union movement has that legal space. So I think those dynamics are important as we enter and discuss. And as we speak now, leaders of the trade unions movement are involved in the practice of the activities today without the trade union organizations. I think this is a part of the dynamics that we need to put it because they are a reality. Let me say, in the course of all the developments, in the course of all the space we are faced with today, had we have the mass strike by the workers, had we have the organized labor involved in semi-legal and illegal activities on the protest, because they also do not have the right to protest. So that's why I'm saying there are also elements of illegal existence of the trade union, in particular in the mass strike activities, because those barriers exist. But they also have that legal element of existence, which is infused within the Industrial Relations Act, which also enjoys the ILO support, the International Labour Organization support. So in this course of activities, we will have created a stability in the aspect of the mass strike, in the aspect of the interaction. As we are now, we have got that loose end, which we think we should soberly engage and attend to it because it's a very fundamental aspect. But the dynamics around there were known or unknown. The dynamics have been based on that the Communist Party must not seize control of the trade union organization. There's a consensus among liberals and also among some in the trade union organization that it is necessary that the trade union must be exempted from the communist, from the revolutionary stigma or element. They just have to exist in that way. But I think the realist now says that is a challenge, it's an indictment. It must be discussed, it must be clarified within the trade union. We can't impose ourselves there, but we must train to our comrades in the unions they need to soberly discuss this issue and battle over it. What role should the trade union movement play? Or what is the significant role that trade unions must play in that revolution? It is a fact that without the organization, that the effort of the organized labor, we cannot wage any revolution, a successful revolution for that matter. I think these are critical points that I think they must be put into table, must be engaged, interrogated. So to say, these dynamics make us have got assignments that have not been attended, which need also to be harshly and quickly attended so that we move into the correct space of what we want to do. The phases of life that we are in now, truly it says the survival of the revolution is based on our capabilities of organizing from the underground. The clandestine mobilization is now our essence of victory. And in as such, those that have organized perfectly in that area can now determine the truth. The breakthrough now can be determined by those who have accepted the rules and the aspect of underground mobilization. We have understood the issue of clandestine organization. We have respected the condition of the tyrant that it doesn't allow free participation. In this question, comrade, on the issue of clandestine is the aspect of security. The underground movement needs to be secured, and its security is the basis, because as we speak today now, the whole range of the forces have been surrounded by undercover agencies. And this is the confidence that Mswati has, which has been briefed, that yes, we're in control of the main elements in the this morning today, when we were from yesterday, when we were in the combat, we were saying, some people were saying, hey, let's put our t-shirts and then go to the roads and push up here. And then we said, but truly it is not an element of one comrade thinking. It's the attitude of the enemy that says, identify those that we want so that we can have a cage, because there is uncertainty. Because the regime is interested. That's why they are detaining people. They are interested in reconnaissance. They are interested in grouping up information so that they can know about the situation they are prepared to enter to. And they are approaching the situation from a military point of view. Because really this tyrant, really this quasi-fascist system has got that mentality. And these are realities of our times. We want to ignore that, or some will choose to ignore it. It must not be triumphant, because it creates the element of confusion within even our own forces. It makes everyone not to play a major role that people can play, so that people do not understand the value of information about how the enemy organizes, about their disposition, about their deployments, about their own status, including their incentives. How much money do they have? How much do they get? What promises have they been given? So people will not value such valuable information, because their understanding of issues is like, we can still fight the system with rumors by promoting information that is incorrect, untested, instead of working towards tangible intelligence information that can be used to defeat the system. I think that is the most critical element in that phase. Another point, which I think is very important, is that we need to deal with the psychological elements in the course of the revolution. The call for peaceful marches is one of the grave dangers that we've entered. And then if we continue to push in that area, we will be responsible for even the conditions that will be created for our people. Where is the space for peace in this environment? And you must interrogate that. And then if we promote peace when there's no peace, and instead of reinforcing the capacity of our people to bring peace through fighting this violence, then we are undermining our aspect. We are forcing people to disengage from the picket line, because of promoting elements that do not necessarily attend to the scientific programs or processes that are in our environment. So then to shout over that thing, to create that hullabaloo and this myth about peace, 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 when there is no peace, the element of peace, I think we are contributing in terms of defeating the picket line, making the picket line to be weakened, doing the elements that makes the picket line not to be sustainable, to be only on a day activities. I didn't support and I will never support a mother of all marches. On what basis? The revolution cannot be won by a daily strike. We need to reinforce on the building up of a mass resistance, of a mass movement that will create an attitude of making the country ungovernable, of carrying sabotage activities, of protecting our communities, of running an offensive, a psychological offensive against the regime, where it says if they prepare for this, we destroy it before it happens, so that we can undermine even the cadres of the regime. Those who are adamant to support the regime, they must feel stressed and frustrated, because if it is about doing a printing, the printer must not be working. If the printer is due for services, the people who are services must not return it in time, so that every aspect of the operation of the system is suffering, so that it destroys its fiber and its element, by making sure that even the very finer elements that are prepared with ignorance to serve the system will fail, will feel the system has failed, the system has collapsed. We have also tried to say, and most of our comrades, I think they are, as they are here, they know very well. Let's force, let's encourage and motivate the members of parliament to resign. Let's force and motivate the members of the cabinet to resign. The country must be in a crisis. People, there must be in a crisis. We must deepen them, we must make them to be visible, so that anyone who wants and attempts to work and support the regime in any way must be doing it outside the bounds of an institution called a government. So I think those are the practical elements that we need to be focusing on. We need to be dealing with them, and we must motivate ourselves if we call ourselves a movement fighting for common goal. This should be our practical attitude towards dealing with this question. So we need to create, and we must motivate our youth that every day, every minute, every hour must be associated with this psychological offensives. These spaces must be dealt with. The chiefs must be removed from the communities. We don't need those symbols anymore. Let's attack the chiefs. They're so vulnerable. In most of the areas, they do not even have electricity. Yes, we are aware that already there are contingencies of the army that are there, stationed there. Let's take their guns. Let's raid those environments and arm ourselves with those weapons. Because some of them are in a very, very awkward environment where there could be no defense. So let's infiltrate, let's deal with this situation and then win that battle in that areas. And we must make sure that we destroy these chiefdoms. Most of them, they must move from our community so that our people can live a free life to try to organize and be faced with the attitude of how do they defend themselves in the environment of eventualities of the barbaric act of the regime. So they must learn that that freedom is the one that will govern how they must live. If we still maintain the existence of such institutions, I think we are like something, but so I think that is an attitude that we must create, we must promote in ourselves. Those symbols, those figures that represent the tyrant must never be allowed to breathe in our communities. I think this starts from tomorrow, if not tonight. It should start from tomorrow, if not tonight, to be ended, because that lifespan, that life attitude must be our attitude of now as we move forward. All the prince, all the members of the royal family in our communities must vacate those communities, because those should be zones that I think we need to make sure that our environment of existence must be guaranteed. So we need to create a very, very firm position and attitude along those areas. We need to create that. We are not expecting by the end of the month that we can still have chiefs in our environment. It will be one of the serious indictments that I think we will fail to do. We must force some of them to resign and join the people, because I think it is also fair that they can, or some must make a decision to come up and join the people, including the people in the army, the people in the police, or some of them who are clever enough must join our ranks. It is time, and it's not too late for them to come up and join the ranks, but they must do it by making formal resignations so that they can make the situation to be very workable for us so that we can progress. I think that's an environment we are in. That is what will make us work out. We need to be very smart on our understanding of the countermeasures. Let's not lose sight on the attitude of the enemy as it is day in and day out. Ours, comrades, is to keep the regime, the political elite, the royal family members, and if so, some of the imperialist backers to be at no ease as we stand now. To be at no ease means they must know that a day is as dangerous as the night. They must know that the meal they eat is as dangerous as if they have not eaten. So hunger and insatisfaction must on to one course. We are aware that this is their comfort. Wherever and whatever the struggle might go, if it doesn't tamper with their personal life, if it doesn't tamper with their security, if it doesn't tamper with their economic luxury, we are not doing anything. And I think this is a part and parcel of the mission that I think must compose us. If we are saying we are in a condition of a grave danger, and if we don't act swiftly, we are exposing our country into danger. I think those are the practical things that we must do. Comrades, also, it's important that we must expand our mission. There should be no area unworkable for the revolution. There should be no area irresponsive to the organizational demands. There should be no individual who moves and do practical activities without imposing danger to the system. All of us in our daily mission, in our daily activities, we must be in one way or the other. Either are people who are in defense of the system or people who are fighting against the system. There should be no stand-bys in this situation. And we must also make it very clear. Some of the members of the international community that are inside our country, it may be time that they must leave our country because we do not want to be responsible for other conditions. It is important that most of the countries that have people in Swaziland, we need to write to them and advise them that our country will be entering into a cleansing environment, whereby we want to say, each one of us now are building our country. We are desperate. I think we need to notice that. It's a very, very serious situation. Very few countries in the world have already stood up to support us. And we have to do it in our own way. And doing it in our own way means we must avoid committing crimes that tomorrow we will be supposed to account over them. So it is important that, yes, most of the people who are innocently in our country, because they assumed that there was peace, to say they must also look up. It should be refugees, it should be tourists, it should be any other person, because our condition may not allow a bystander, because otherwise the bystander might be obstructive, because we are also off guard against the enemy counter strategies. So a bystander can one way or another be an element of the counter strategy of the regime. So I think that is an important part. So the expansion of the mission and organizing beyond the bounds really requires us to do a lot of activity so that we can influence in those spaces. In particular, our people in the diaspora. Really, there is much to be done there. It's simple, comrades. The people in the diaspora are Swazis like everyone. They are like all of us. So there is nothing particular to them because they know our situation. But what is good about them is that they've got an advantage, an added advantage to the masses of our country because they are exposed, they have resources, they have got know-hows, they've got networks. And they don't want to use these networks. They don't want to use these capabilities to support the struggle in the country. They also come up and lament over the situation in the country. In spite that the majority, the people in the country are fighting and fighting with nothing in their own hands. In spite of the reality that these people are being butchered by the system, but they make very little significant approach in that. In majority, some of them are interested to deal with the conditions of the wounded. They are interested in burying those who are dead, but they're not interested in rescuing the life of those that are alive. So I think let us have an attitude that balances all these elements. Once you protect, once you deal with the cases of those affected, but let us also pledge our responsibility to the struggle to end this tyrant so that we can avoid any loss of life. We can avoid most of the dangers that we have experienced, that of the injuries, and some of our comrades who have been exposed into permanent disabilities. I think that is the important case that we think we need to do. And also, we must make it upon our responsibilities. Mswati will be tried in the country under the new government. There is no international responsibility that can take that responsibility out from us. So even though there's a campaign, but let us make the campaign to say we expose the atrocities. We make the international community to isolate that regime, to know that it is dangerous to work with. But it must be our responsibility to put Mswati to trial for any crime he commits. So it is only a democratic government that can best put Mswati to trial, so that all the victims of his system can come out, and then he may be tried on the basis of the magnitude of the pains, of the sufferings he has caused to our population, other than to be judged from the basis of international law alone, when he has committed crimes in our society. I think that is a very important element that we need to put into our space. Just build our democracy and make it sort of accountable by this democratic government that must be established. So, comrades, we need to ensure that when we move into any of the phases that we are going through, we must take an important responsibility that it is us governed by our love for freedom, our love for democracy, our love for humanity. That's why we are engaging in this struggle. But as we stand now, we need to pull up, because the conditions we are in have exposed that we are dealing with another very dangerous element as exposed today. That if we are so sure about what we have seen and what we have heard about how he has praised himself about what he thinks he is, I think it is our duty now to say, really, let us attend the problem as is. It's a problem that has got very, very unique features, which I think, in my own view, and as we may also draw our analysis, it's a grave danger that if we can keep it for other years, for the next day and other day without being checked, we may find that it can create atrocities that will be unprecedented. It will be more than what we have seen today. It can be something worse. And then we need to organize very well. So it is part and parcel of our pledge and our attitude as a Communist Party, that the victory relies on the attitude of the masses. Victory relies on how best we prepare the masses. Victory relies on the cadence, on how we have reinforced the abilities of our comrades to know not only the politics of operation, but to know also the politics of overthrowing a system and bringing in a democracy in our country. I think that activity that must reinforce in our society must combine those kind of elements. Why are we involved in the struggle, and what is expected in us in our struggle to achieve victory? Because as we stand now, we are in a situation where, if otherwise we do not organize effectively to end the system, Mswati can still stay in power and can stay longer than necessary. In our view, and in our own thinking as a Communist Party, it is that we have to organize this and reinforce this kind of attitude to say, in the course of the struggle towards victory, our attitude must never move away from the objective that we want to be. It must never lose the attitude of democracy. There must be no element, no temptation that make us to think we can maneuver it in any other way. Because if without a democracy, it can end up in the opposite. So if we can organize it from the elements of democratic arrangement, it makes sense. Whether someone feels he's more popular than the others, but it is not time for people to then think that they can annex themselves and determine themselves as the future leader of the country. Because literally, if we will lose one part of our situation to say the democratic transition, there must be democratic process. It must be formed by an interim authority. It must be the interim authority must be constituted by a conference for democracy, which will involve community activists who are involved in the daily economic activities, seconded by the communities to say they can defend their interests in that transition. They can relate into the particular space of how best can we organize our kind. If there will be any element of a missed sector or section of our society in the transitional government,
will have already spoiled it and will have already destroyed it. So in this case, it says the mobilization from across our city must allow active participation of our people, active involvement of our people on the basis of knowing exactly what we want to achieve, how can we achieve it, people can play their role. We do not say it from the me. Our people have demonstrated that they know even how to undermine the regime. As we speak today, the country is ungovernable. As we speak today, the economy is in crisis. As we speak today, Mike's sabotage activities taking place. So in the nutshell, if we sustain ungovernability, if we sustain sabotage campaign, fully we are moving closer to the victory that will sustain us, and we'll be able now to institute a democratic transition that will allow space for democracy, draft a new constitution, to establish a new constitution of the republic. I think it must be very clear now that our main fight for our future now is a democratic transition. For us as Communist Party, we are trying to say, even if you can apply any law of war, leave the enemy with one space to move in, and the space that we are living into the regime is the capital's route. It is through the democratic republic. No constitutional monarchy. We can't allow the regime to come out from that door of feudalism. The only door that we have opened will be that door of capitalism. We want a democratic republic. So if we have created that space, if we allow that passage here, we are in the observance of the law of war, that we can fight the system but create a space for it to go out. It is that capitalism. It is only a democratic republic that Swaziland can achieve the goals that we want to achieve. The exit route from Mswati should be through the democratic republic, so that he is reduced as a private citizen and live like a private citizen like anyone, but not as an institution of the monarch. And that is where the situation is. I think today he has clarified it correctly and has vindicated us in the main when we say the only way for Swaziland to be seen in a democratic route is through a democratic republic. I think that is what we are trying to fight for, and that is what I think our effort and reinforcement must lead us to. Thank you.
Thank you, Comrade General Secretary of the Communist Party of Swaziland, Comrade Thokozane Kunene. Indeed, comrades, I think the analysis is clear and the line is clear on what we need to do. We're not trying to save a tyrant. We're trying to remove a tyrant. So as we fight, we cannot be at the same time be obsessing about how to save the tyrant in a future democratic Swaziland, how to maintain this tyrant in the future. And it is clear that if we want real development for the people of Swaziland, then that future must involve all the people of Swaziland and benefiting on that freedom and never putting other people at the top who will be untouchable. This regime cannot be allowed to continue, comrades, not anymore. There's a need for a revolutionary seizure of power. This is a war. This war was waged by the monarchy against the people. We just have to partake in it because we have no choice. The war has been forced on us. We do not wish to be in this war, but it has been forced on us. And he has clearly proven beyond reasonable doubt there is no space for dialogue. No space is closed, all the spaces. In any event, it was always clear. And the Communist Party has always said this again and again, that this man will never dialogue with anyone. But there is now evidence beyond reasonable doubt. And SADC and them themselves, they are clear about that. But of course, this regime is working with other feudalistic elements outside Swaziland. And these feudalistic elements need to be opposed because they are diluting our struggle. So let us look also on the roles of the other international bodies, SADC and others, who, if there is any role for them moving forward, because it seems Mswati has closed that door. Yeah, we need, of course, we need to call on the trade union movement. Organized labor needs to come on board and take this struggle forward together with the entire masses of Swaziland. And of course, if you were to look at what the people are saying, clearly we cannot avoid invoking the underground movement now. It is very, very crucial now, more crucial than ever before. Comrades have been putting opinions on the chat. Kosi Dlamini was saying, our struggles haven't affected his forces. And that's why they are also still very confident with their brutality. If they knew that we are also out there to push them out of their comfort zones, they would be acting better. From Comrade Alain Dupont, he says, our struggle has entered a period where chancers think a revolution is a walk through the park, and the arrogant emperor has exposed that fallacy. Sanel Shon Mbingo, the comrade, is saying, it's emphasizing especially on the importance of political education. And truly speaking, some of the forces long abandoned the question of political education. Say that the importance of political parties to recruit has never been more urgent than today. The regime has exposed its brutalities to the very end today. Comrade Corsi, you're saying there's no place for peace. It has never been there. We should motivate people to come to the struggles ready for violence from the forces. There will never be a revolution won through coming with bare hands and running away from the bullets. There was never peace in this country. Peace has been used for oppression. Let's force them to resign. All institutions are part of the hand of the tyrant. Zizi is saying, feudalism has no space and role in our communities. No bystanders and spectators in the revolution. The time is now. As a vanguard of the working class, it is our duty to lead and take up arms against the people's enemy. It is a call for everyone who calls himself or herself a Swazi to take up arms and fight the tyrant out of our land. Let's start with you, Comrade Mswati, then Comrade Ketty.
First of all, comrade, I would like us to give thanks to the wonderful work of the party of workshopping the youth of Swaziland. Thank you for the political school to the youth. Our work is being recognized on the ground these days. The numbers of the conscientized youth are getting higher and higher every day. Everyone is confessing that this kind of protest is for the first of its kind in Swaziland. Yes, afikile amakomanisi. And today's defiance of Sibaya was not only spotted from the youth, but almost in the entire nation. And my view is that if the nation can simply do the same in the national annual cultural events by Tingundla Autocracy, Umhlanga Ingwala, and Lusekwane, no doubt it can mean the downfall of Tingundla. Mswati summoned the nation to Sibaya because he gave false promise to his Troika friends that he do not need their intervention in the situation, but he can fix them himself. But because of the inclined pressure by progressive, I think, comrades, it is high time the nation, the mass must be led into victory, especially they have shown by their defiance and that. Lastly, comrades, I feel like something must be done about Kasaro, the false prophet. We must mobilize the richest people, League of Churches, Conference of Churches, to demote him from his position for what he has done against the religion people, the religious people. And I have a question for Ramaphosa, comrade, even though he's not part of today's meeting or our meeting, that is he the one who told Mswati to deploy soldiers on the street to shoot and kill the masses? Or is Mswati who told Ramaphosa to also deploy soldiers into KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng? These are similar situations, and they are answering the situation the same. Nginawo lo mbuzo comrade la kulama protest la khona eSouth Africa noma lesiwabonile ukuthi ingabe abe namuphi umthelela kule momentum ekhona eSwazini as for struggle for liberation, because some of izinduku zethu esigadla ngazo sezinokuthi mhlawumbe zingezwakali. Ngiyabekisa nje sebanokubhaca ukuthi i-fuel mhlawumbe nako konke esingakuthole eSwazini is because of lama protests ase-South Africa. And naye siyamuzwa lamuhla ugiya ngokuthi some of the countries asa-experience lokhu naye akubonile, ubala i-South Africa. Ukusho ukuthi mhlambe i-international eye ingaba nakweni mhlambe ukushaya indiva lo msebenzi obekhona eSwazini just because nase-South Africa ube khona. Yes, they are also part of East SADC region. If ever to send soldiers on the street solve the problem, yet now we are still fighting for liberation. Sifuna freedom eSwatini. But we've experienced almost a similar situation with a country who is already in democracy. And the comrade la sikhona khona siyaziwa ukuthi singamaqabane, and abantu sebayabuza ukuthi kani silwanini iqabane elikhulu sesigathele, bring the guns sesifuna ukulwa. I-question nje odibana nayo if nangempela you don't hide yourself ukuthi when you are a communist. Thank you, comrade.
Yeah, all right. Thanks very much, comrade Internesh. Yeah, mine will be the issue ukuthi a way forward and the current situation. We need to be honest to ourselves. And as the party, I believe and I know that we've been honest. And the only thing that has made us to be unique or to progress and develop, it's the truth and honesty. Because if we were not truthful to the situation that is happening in Swaziland and the world, I don't think that we're going to be where we are today. It is very, very important for us to be part and parcel of the masses and the poor, and to scrutinize the system and the general masses. What personally I've recognized or I've seen is that the Swazi people, they are sick and tired of poverty. Let me put it like that. Other than the system, they don't understand about the nature of the system. They only think about poverty, which is something that is it's a direct problem to them. That I don't have a job, I can't go to school, I'm currently hungry. They don't see that it's a problem which has been caused by a system called the capitalist and Mswati himself, such that some of the masses, they still believe that Mswati, if begane madlebe amamela, we couldn't be in this situation today. They don't see that we need to remove that system totally. Hence, today they are calling Makaukau and Bacele as a person who can substitute Mswati. They are calling Makaukau the first, because Mswati is Mswati the third. They even praise him the way Mswati is being praised currently, saying Bayete Bacele, wena Bacele Lua, what, all of those praises that they are doing, lapha eLutsitzini for Mswati. So they don't see umzabalazo or revolution as something that can change life yomuntu permanently or totally. They see umzabalazo as a current situation, the present situation. Now I'm hungry, I need to eat now. Not that now I'm hungry, I need to eat forever. Or even the next generation must find the situation right. They are being selfish and individualistic, of which we know that the capitalist has imposed that to the masses. Our people are so brainwashed through the education system and the religion media, such that even now we know Gaguti Swaziland is dominated by Christianity. Instead of them thinking that let's take up our arms and fight this enemy who is blocking us or who is denying us for our land so that we can have food, they still believe that a miracle will happen. Let us pray so that God can rescue us in this current situation. So that what I have seen or I'm analyzing, whereas as communists or as revolutionaries, we know that for us to change these individualistic feelings that these individual masses have, it's only Goguti si confront the enemy physically. So there are no peaceful means that will liberate us or will change the conditions in this in any revolution. And then there are these people who came to South Africa, some not only in South Africa, the diaspora Swazi people. The reason why they moved from Swaziland to another country is for greener pastures, of which still it's part of being individualistic or being selfish. So for that person to recruit or to mobilize him or her to be part and parcel of a total change, we need to know the character of that person. So these people is out of the country to generate resources and go back to sustain his or her family, doesn't care about his or her society or the community. Hence, people now they are desperate for change, as in the immediate change. Whosoever comes and say, now I don't want, he takes that thing. In future kwendakalani. So hiyo lenye into lenye ngayibuka ngayibheka ne role le idlalwe ngile NM ku conservative ukuthi even these people who are saying we don't want Mswati, if ungendali here and put inhloko yamagawugawu nemajobo, for them it's fine. If magawugawu bekunguye lo Mswati asitene esibayeni, for them it was going to be fine. They still conservative. There is a huge role that we still need to play in the society to change the minds of the general masses. Not all of them will understand through the soft means. Hence, as comrades, we need to apply both means, soft and harsh means. So as far as ngabantu ngokomqondo nge-IQ level yethu, lo munye umuntu does understand to change when you engage with him or her. Lo munye umuntu understand masophethe umshizi umzaqa like a cow. For that person to understand, you must have a shambok or a stone. So we need to master all of those methods like kumele siwasebenzise. But to be honest enough, like even in Nalana, we do have comrades who do not love Communist Party of Swaziland. Reasons being, I'm assuming, because of their personal interest. Because if they were pushing for the interest of the people, there was no need, or there is no need for one to say, I'm against the Communist Party of Swaziland. The only thing that has made us to be popular or to get support from the masses is the honesty to Makaban. So it is very important that we must keep on being honest and truthful to our masses. The only power that we have currently is the masses. Financially so, we are struggling, it's a fact. We cannot hide that. But then I think there is no, hence like we are on our own. The SADC will not help us. South Africa will not help us. Only individual people who are true revolutionaries will help us. And they are there. It's not like they're not there. They are existing. And we will get help from those people. We are on our own. So if we are on our own, let's shift strategy to ulogunye in case of how far or what best can we do to make change in the country. And let's not only think that South Africa will help us, Mozambique will help us. They are under SADC, the very same SADC which is under the capitalist system. These countries are under capitalist system. They have their own crises. Not that we need to neglect the crisis that they are faced with. But I think that now, if we can fully admit that we are on our own, what best can we do? And chances still are very high that even if Mswati Segehlile will still be on our own, because I feel and see that these so-called comrades, because I'll say they're so-called comrades, they're jealous. Let me put it like that. But I don't want to use the word jealous. I don't know which word can I use, but they've got that thing that we can't be. We can't admit that that country now is far better than our country. That's what I'm thinking of, because you ask yourself, why people or comrades or revolutionaries, those who are calling themselves revolutionaries, distancing themselves from the revolution as Eswatini. wanting us, as Swazi people, they will come and ask you about unity. What about unity? Why are you not uniting with so and so? Why are you not uniting yourself with so and so? And him or herself, he's not even uniting himself with so and so, as if uzenza holy. So those are the challenges. In my input currently, way forward, in our minds, we are on our own. What best can we do as seeing it on our own to liberate the country? But we know that on our own, yes, it's true. We can't, 100%. Most of the job must be done by us. They will contribute if they want to. If they failed to contribute, still let's move on with our duties. We will liberate the country. There is no one who will stop change, whether we like it or not. For whatever, there is no way that we can turn this revolution backward. We need to fight for the interests of the people. Thank you.
Comrades, I just want to emphasize, I'm happy to the Communist parties came up with the program with some so build on the ground, the community councils. It is one of the duties of the community councils, this is comrade, to our volunteers, so the people when doing our mass mobilization and the education work. Because the remnants of the past, comrade, they still exist, they still with us. And within the democratic movement, comrade, you must know that there are people who are conservative, people who still believe in the feudal disorder, people who still want to maintain that order, that feudal order. So comrades, when we go there, we must leave no stone unturned. We must teach our people, we must expose the ills of the feudals. We must expose everything. We don't want to find ourselves at the end of the day adopting is in the Fanabo contra Lesa that will reinforce the enemy and the institutions of the enemy of the feudals. We want to do away with feudalism. We want to do away with les indoles wherever they exist. So comrades, I'm happy with some comrades we are like the people in the diaspora forum, the people who are outside the country. I don't know how can we develop a mechanism, comrade, to see. We must also reach to those people, because within those people, within that community, the diaspora community, there are people who still believe, would say, no, we can remove that man, but we still want to maintain our culture. We still need someone who will lead that sector, a feudal or a culture, Utsibekon. In the group, so we are comrades, with people who want to maintain that system. Our cadres in the communities where they work, where they do mass mobilization and recruitment, they must also crush these elements wherever they exist, comrade. Because as we are back, as I've said, the remnants of the past, comrades, they will haunt us even in the long run, in the long future, if we don't want to crush them now. We must, once we identify them, comrade, we must make sure that we crush them and lay a society for the betterment of the working class and the people of Swaziland. So, comrades, I think it's about the contribution that I wanted to make, comrade, and I would say we must be steadfast and we must work faster with the institutions and deepen the institutions of democracy, society through this community councils. We need comrade as over faster, because these opportunities, comrade, they are there. And they want to take this advantage, this opportunity in their advantage. They want to exploit this opportunity. Because the people, some of them were even the Pagma Machis. Comrade, why are you here? Why are you striking? What's the purpose of you being here? So I want to overthrow the system. Then where to from there? Uzokutshela ngabo makawukawu uqala njengoba isho comrade Tichi makakho uqala wena wakubuka ukuphathuma kwenzakala kalani waduma isiZulu kwabaleka Mswati kwenzeka yonke lento lena ngithabo umbone lo muntu ukuthi kahle kahle lo bunkhundla because kunalento ethi kunomuntu odingikhundla kunalo muntu oconservative ulo bunkhundla bese kunalo muntu ignorant yabo those are two different categories alabantu sinabo lapha na society lo muntu unabo lo bunkhundla then masumsusile kulapha na kuleyanto but lo bunkhundla selobukhona la ngaphakathi kuyena so we must go the comrades babaphathisa so we must baptize them but that's why recruiting our forces lento ukuthi the ANC government comrade the ANC led government will never support our revolution will never support our struggle. I was always wondering over the years alone thinking why the ANC is not so much interested in our struggle because therefore all the capabilities, all the material support, every support they do have to sustain or to help to assist the struggle, our struggle. But I then realized one day no, but these guys won't help us. They won't come into our rescue. Why? Because they are sleeping in the same bed with the enemy, with the feudals. But Tatabona, the traditional leaders, as their motive forces, the feudals as their motive forces. So, if Bona they will they will lose support from the feudals, from the chiefs, from the kings. Now you don't get that thing, that garbage. They will lose support because crash their force, motive force or their friendly force, the feudalists. So I didn't realize these people they will never help us, they'll never come into our rescue because it's a monarchy about support high. You see. So comrade, those elements will always be there. They will always be there as long as we haven't reached that depth of which figure up to our people is by educate. But it's about educator comrade over the years, it's about farmer programs, it's about political schools, it's about the political direction, it's about everything. But there are those people figure, those people who are in the communities where we must reach now, comrade, through these councils. We must reach there and educate our people and expose the ills of the regime. Sisu Selensila of the old. Thanks, comrade. Thanks, comrade International. That was my contribution.
Thank you, comrade Zweli. Thank you for that. And yeah, what we need, I think we should need to emphasize, comrades must start to volunteer to come into these community councils, because these are institutions of democracy. Yeah, these are for democracy, so they are for fighting. The Communist Party has already put them in as a task. We need to be part of them. So everyone must volunteer to be part of them, but also volunteer to get other people into those various councils. We need to form these councils. There must be a council for security. There must be a council for mobilization, whether it's mobilization of funds, of tools, of machinery that we need, mobilization of the masses, and so on. There must also be a council for welfare. The people who've been shot, so many of them who've been injured, heavily injured, the regime is not going to take care of them. It is us, but we must organize ourselves correctly. The comrade Sean, go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, comrade. I'm going to try and be as short as possible. Here we are today. King of Mswati is publicly humiliated in the struggle and showed us all the negative
Yeah, thank you, Comrade Zanele. You did raise the question. These are very crucial questions. I think I heard you on the question of different schools of thought. The leadership question you raised the leadership question there, and that we must not be fixated on individuals. And yes, we do acknowledge, of course, the roles of the various MPs, but what we need is a revolution. And sometimes people can speak nicely, but not necessarily in a revolutionary way. And of course, the question of recruitment and having political education centers in different communities. Yes, I think this is also what these councils must do as well. But of course, they don't replace necessarily the structures of the Communist Party. The Communist Party still has the duty to continue political education. The Communist Party runs political education, national political education schools every year. There's a winter school, then there's a summer school. And we've been running these schools since the formation of the party 10 years ago, without fail. Even when there are no resources, we hold the schools. Before I go back to the GS, I want to read just one from Comrade Tyrant. Yes, that's a very crucial contribution on the chart, from the chart. He says, the first one was Mswati has shown highest level of ignorance and arrogance that needs to be rewarded accordingly. But he knows that we are just too slow. We're too slow in building that up. And he also comes in and makes this point that leaders, we don't see you there when the forces start firing. Where are the leaders? That's the question. When we're throwing the stones at the police, you guys are nowhere to be found. I feel like this is betrayal, comrades. We're not leaders, but the struggle is at heart. So if we don't see our leaders, it is demotivating.
Thanks, Comrade Pass. Thank you to all of you comrades who made contribution, but also who have been part of this session since we started. Questions are as they are and as stated by comrades, but moreover, they do not necessarily, some of them need real answers, but they are an expression of the part and parcel of the elements of the strategy and tactics of what really has to be done. I think the first one on the faith-based organizations, I spoke about the organizations as political parties and the trade unions and others, but I didn't say anything about the faith-based organizations. And Comrade then raise that point and say, yes, they are there. I think we have started this week, I'm sure comrades in the country have been doing that, to have meetings and sessions with the faith-based organization in their organized institution. But I think what is critical in the life of our organizations in the country is the democratic life. You meet a priest and a representative of but we have never had a conference with Council of Churches to discuss matters of interest to the church or to the Council of Churches, neither to the League of Churches nor Conference of Churches. So I think that is part and parcel of the bigger problem we face. It's an opinion of an individual. So the reason that whilst we are fighting for democracy, but don't live a democratic life, is a very, very big problem, because we believe that these institutions, or like such as the Council of Churches, they have got the legal rights to organize. So then it must not be a failure on their side to be democratic in their existence. So the view and values or positions of the synthesized position of the Council of Churches is important.
So in one way or another, there must be such kind of a lifestyle arrangement. But also, it was the absence of the Council of Churches in the development in the struggle until a moment where we could only see statements. I think that was the other critical position. But moreover, was their main role that the church plays in sustaining the autocracy. I think that is the dilemma at which these institutions are in. But through mobilization, through engagement, through dialogue, they must come out in the surface and then play an important role, because we are saying they've got an important role to play in the transitional process. But the transition starts now. The transition is the period of the transition is now. So if we have no role to play here and to play another role here, then truly on the other side, the role will still be the same. So where do they stand now? And the main conflict we are here now is that the regime survives because of the role of the church. The revolution doesn't enjoy the support of the church in the main. Though yes, some other organizations offered basic support and services for the revolution. But in the political outlook, we have not yet enjoyed the role of the church in our situation as we stand now. I think that one is the bottom line that I think we need to emphasize without a fear or without being ambiguous over that. But the point is, the role of the church should be significant and must be played, and it's an indictment of that organization to organize better so that they can play their role there. But as a Communist Party, it's our responsibility to organize it, because in a revolution, churches have got no basis, because their duty is to play the role that they play in society. But for revolution, they need to be mobilized. I think that is another responsibility. As communists, we must engage the church and mobilize them, go to the priests, talk to them, and encourage them to organize better so that they can play the role that relates to their thinking and how they think about the future that we want to build. We are not imposing. They cannot be communists. They cannot be whatsoever. They are only a church, but what role can they play in this situation? I think that's the position comrades have raised. I think we need to do much work. The role of South Africa, the condition in South Africa and what's happening in the country. Truly, comrades, it's normal in any revolution. Wherever a condition in a country starts, it affects the environment, it affects the neighborhood, it creates certain elements. But what we can put as underlying factors is that the whole region is affected by common problems. But unfortunately, it would be on the basis of which problem shows certain elements, antagonism that needs attention. And then other aspect is that there is always a condition of a spark. So the region is pregnant of a revolution to reject neoliberalism. There's poverty in the region, and in particular in South African condition where we are sure that the biggest situation they are facing is that of the influx of people from outside countries. You may understand that in the main, it was about how do people from Swaziland have been affected. Recently, before I was actually reached this position, there were Swazi truck drivers who were humiliated in South Africa by South Africans because they are taking their jobs and so on. So these are conditions, but at certain stages, they reach a level of qualitative assimilation, and they can come in with elements that may not necessarily be of the content, but it can be of elements, not the entire content. But it becomes a role of revolutionaries to quantify, to bring it into context and say literally what is there. So what I'm trying to say is that the developments in South Africa and how it affects us cannot be immune from our condition. It is part and parcel of a package of a condition that will affect our situation. Let me say, if the situation in South Africa has not gone to that far, but the same condition in South Africa will have had effects into our own cause of revolution of struggle, as it were in Mozambique, in Zimbabwe, Lesotho, Botswana, and elsewhere. So all what we're trying to do, or what you are doing in the country, and as we do, it affects everyone across the world. What's happening in any country affects across us throughout the situation. So that's why we need to bring this into understanding that the element of internationalism in the struggle is a very necessary component that we need to be, not to worship it, but we need to find ourselves in good understanding about this whole environment and act basis on those bases, because some of these issues come in as factors, yet in their necessities, they are an element of the conditions that we are in. So I think South Africa, as it stands, it is like that. But comrades were sure and so clear when they say the reason or the other element, because as I said, we had to tend to benefit more. But that's natural. In Zimbabwe, not in Zimbabwe, in Mozambique, the revolution thought they could benefit automatically from the conditions that happened to the neighborhood. But other countries said, no, we have no business with your strike. We are on our own struggles. I'm saying the elements of narrow nationalism, the national-based attitudes of mentality are a cause of problems in any revolution. They are a factor that affects progress in any revolution, because narrow nationalist element tendencies are literally an element that weakens the brain. It weakens political thoughts. If someone brings in nationalism, meaning Mswati, meaning South African, meaning Mozambican, once that mentality preoccupies your thinking, it narrows your political thought, because there is nothing like that in politics. And the internationalism defines it washes away corrosive attitudes in your thinking once you think international. So because in this way, it supports your values to discuss and say, what is, as Comrade Mswati was trying to present, how does this affect us? What are the systems around it? It was giving our very accurate assessment. Said, what is it? Because in South Africa now, when a problem you see, there's immobility, the harbour is affected, so petrol cannot move up, even in Swaziland. But our duty was to carry support activity, to fail the system, because we are fighting that system. We must fail it, it must collapse, it must not work, it must not survive. So if someone thinks it must survive, it's bad because it thinks in the same way of the enemy. Ours is to fail it. If there's anything that makes people that survive, we must chop it, we must fail, must make it fail, must collapse it. That's our attitude, that's our mentality. So you are saying, it appears as if the regime then says the reason for not having fuel is because of the problem in Swaziland. No, it is his companies, Matrax Mswati, Matrax who are in Swaziland, who are providing support and security. But these trucks are targeted for sabotage. Let them come to the country, we must sabotage them. And they are targets for advancing the revolution. Let them come, we'll fight them, we'll attack them. So I think that is another situation. That's why they are parked in South Africa. But you want to find a reason and say, no, South Africa, but the condition in South Africa makes the situation even very easy and similar to us, because now there is the economic shock is in the hands of the regime. But we do not have to allow them to think they must then submit as a reason that it is not their problem. The problem says it is them who are a problem. We must go in this condition as they are. So Comrade was trying to patch that relationship. But also in my own view was that to help us to further analyze and understand that it is important to understand that international solidarity and internationalism in a struggle is a part and parcel. Mozambique was free because the working class in what was the colony in Portugal then said, let's overthrow the tyrant that was supporting the colonialism, the colonial forces. So they overthrow that regime in Portugal. And in the overthrow of the Portugal regime, there was no support to the colonial force in Mozambique. And then Mozambique was free. So I'm saying that is the basis of internationalism. So it works in that way. So I think that was the point that Comrade was. But it's beyond that, Comrade. But my view is that internationalism must be part and parcel of our thinking, of our mentality to advance. The armed struggle is ideal, comrades. people are calling for to fight the system. And ours as revolutionaries, the only way to fight a system in a revolutionary way with arms is through the arms struggle. And in the arms struggle, we apply guerrilla tactics. And it is in that reason that we are saying must run sabotage campaigns, must run the country government under the autocracy, under the Mswati autocracy. I think it is important that we need to, but how to organize the armed forces, how to organize our armed elements. Truly, the first point is that it needs a detailed volunteers who will understand the high level of sacrifices, and in particular the youth. Actually, that is how we are. Commerce will understand maybe some few things around there. When we was about the Taban, the students were in strike, they were outside the campuses, they organized in the eve of their session, of their strike. There was a call that they must go to Manzini. The students said, no, let's go to Matab. And that's where the element, the attitude of the current position we are in now was developed. It was from that kind of an attitude of the students that organized. But the reason, as I said, comrade, was because the students who were there had developed class consciousness, have attended the school of ideological and political training. And that is what the system, the regime cannot stop, cannot undermine. That is what it is. It is, our struggle has passed through many passages. In the main, people were saying the regime had thought that the cry for deliveries in the Tinkula centers were ideal because they were helping them to canvass for 2023 elections. But it changed. That's why everyone was saying, we are peaceful. No, in my community, in my campaign, under my name, don't use that. That was the outcry for everyone. But because the people who were involved in the strikes were conscious, they moved into a higher level of organization until it reached up a point where they could make the conditions as they were to be. It was based on consciousness. The question was, really, does it really say there was no leadership? What made this situation in the country? Was it by chance? If it was by chance, it has passed through very difficult stages that others were climbing or claiming they can tame it. It was untamable because literally those people who were involved there had class political consciousness. And that is what the regime can't defeat now. That is why the environment that exists in our country now becomes a permanent situation. But it says, how best do we take it forward? How do we preserve our forces? How do we make them fight battles on the other side, whilst they can preserve strength and galvanize and gain more strength, more capabilities? So without organization, without mobilization, those stages cannot reach. So I think it's important. Revolutionary offensive is a necessity that can make not only the survival of the organization, but that has got an element of advancing the revolution. Because if we don't unleash an offensive, your forces will perish because they are magnified in the spaces. I will give comrade one example of what happened. When the momentum was extremely high, there were a lot of calls saying, let's stop action today. We'll be burying the other day. We'll have our mission the other day. They successfully did that to contain our forces, to make them not to move. Because a single measure of inconsistency in the way you manage and wage a revolution will lead into the enemy organizing. So all those attitudes were countermeasures that undermined sustenance of our forces. But in the two elements, most people said it's necessary to say, call it a halt. But calling it a halt, what happened? The regime was able to collect more intelligence, coordinate its own activities, and then had to claim a upper hand on the thing. That's why there were all those raids, successful raids that were carried out to identify people in the millimillimeter, so what, demanding that thing. Why? Because we seized the offensive. So the offensive must never be seized. The offensive must never be there. But come back to say, where were you in the course of the leadership? There were other players whom others were claiming they were leadership. There were other players that were involved in the whole phase, calling it off, calling it on, calling it off, calling it on as they want, as if it is their own mission. And in the course of calling it off, what happened? The enemy builds. And now when the enemy has built enough, they were claiming up Mswati embarrassment because that was their attitude. That was what they have planned, they have cultivated. Why? Because they submitted into the faction of the monarchy that claims they are part of the revolution, but yet they are part and parcel of the mission of the faction, because they are fighting their own internal battles, which is not the battle of the people. So we had invited, we've allowed that. So I'm saying, in the course of all the understanding, society and our people must learn this kind of mistakes. What happened? What went wrong? Who are they? Because the people who were there in the picket line, those who were there running the activities, running the sabotage, carrying the sabotage campaign, doing the barricades, closing up the road, whom created the condition that now they are saying is favorable for revolution. Some of them have been exposed into these dangers. They are hunted by the police and they've got no ground for defense. And these are the majority of the people who say, we need arms so that we can start up and fight. Because already their roll call has been done in their own homes, demanding them to be submitted to the police, because the police and the army wants them to kill them because they think they're the embryo that one. That's why this madness was speaking about and say, these are the people he doesn't know how they behave and what are they. But in the course of the revolution, these are the people who have created this situation. So I think that is important. The revolutionary offensive is a critical element, must be maintained, sustained, and it is the drive that makes us to be free. The diaspora situation, I've said more about it. We need comrades, we need to motivate the people outside the country to pledge practical role, to be very sober in what they want to do. They've got much to do to help the situation in the country. They have so much. As I've said, they've got the networks, they've got some know-how, they have the exposure, and all those kind of abilities. Let them combine this and make it to a solid contribution. External support in our own situation can much come stronger from the diaspora people. So I think there's a need to organize it in a more sober way, in a more rational way. And those who participate in the diaspora, they need to undermine, to overcome some of the very pertinent elements among them, because they have a tendency of committing among themselves about who is what and who is helping. Literally in the diaspora, they are surviving on the basis of what other countries have done. They've got no basis. So they should understand that they are not so much of a high status in where they are in the diaspora. I think that is a good conduct that I think we need to motivate and engage. So as a part, I think we need to enter into their space, motivate them. Truly comrades, most people in the diaspora can't be communists, can't be revolutionaries, but they must pledge a role, pledge a contribution into the revolution. So they might fail. It is very difficult for them to work with the Communist Party, because literally the most people who are in the diaspora are in the nature middle class people who have got their own personal independent. We don't claim anything from them. Their network was organized independent of any of the organization. They are not like exiles. They are not like anything. So I think that is what we need to, but they must know that who are they so that they can play their role. So it depends on how we raise their morale, their activism, their contribution, and how we connect them with the situation they have in the country. Because what they do in the country is to send remittances. They also participate in the competition that exists in the community. Likhala kabani liphucuke kanjani lente kanja uma kafikile ekhaya ufuna kukhomba ku-proof of yena ungubani yena ukuphi what card do I drive what. So I think that is there's a condition they are in. But in the course of the revolution, we want to make them a bit more comfortable in how they serve the cause of the people. So it will be based on how things come to their mind. It is not based on how much we beg them. So what we're trying to reduce as Communist Party is to beg people to pledge a role in the revolution, but we must motivate people to pledge a role, and they must do it with pride, they must do it with consciousness, because truly at the end, everyone must account. What did I do when our country needed most my support? I think that is the position we are in. The councils, comrade, the organization, comrade, is important. I think that is where the party focuses on now. There is a concerted effort. Mswati has neutralized it as embarrassing, but we think it will look good. How best can you maneuver a transition that will preserve the enemy of today, but also isolate the masses? That point, comrades, is not a myth, it's not a creation of a thought, it's realities in our country. The plotting of how can we manufacture an agreement that we can attempt democratic transition between certain elements of opportunists, of liberals, of selfish people with the arrangement of the enemy, so that they can claim they've submitted a freedom in our country without our people. And then in the course, they can continue with the tendencies of the regime, with the former regime, and acting in a new parameter so that they can preserve the same condition, because they also still want to claim ownership of the land of our people. They want to also claim superiority over the resources in the country. They want to use the state to make their own living, because in their own attitude, it is only in the state that they can maneuver better than as other people think. The masses think that productive rate is the condition that will define progress in their own life, because they know that if we produce so much of agricultural products, of the manufacturing, in all these other services, they will be able enough to make things, because on their own, they cannot do it for themselves. They always believe and survive that they have to build a democratic state that will solve their problem. But others say they want to be in the proximity of a state life so that they can achieve their goals. I think those are the practical dynamics that exist in our country now. And these are the elements that also affect unity. These are elements that also affect common approaches and attitude to the struggle. And in the course, what they do is isolate the Communist Party, belittle revolution, but also talk about dialogue and annexation of power through means that have isolated people. I think that is the important part when we say the councils. And it is not only, it cannot be built by the other forces. It is our agreement and understanding as a Communist Party and the communities and the masses in the communities. So we want to say it cannot come from the support of the entire broad forces that exist today. It will come because the Communist Party has convinced the masses that the councils are important because they are the element of their political power. And if they don't have power, they will not have anything. And if they accept the slogan that there is nothing for us without us, and then to benefit us. If that is the notion, that masses would agree, into yonke lehambayo letawuhambisana nabo ayingeti ngalomunye umuntu ayithe ngabo ibe nabo itokhona kufeza inhloso tabo. Uma ngabe kunenhloso levelako ngalomunye umuntu esayidini, they must be suspicious. So if you teach these masses this attitude, they will agree that they must organize into these councils to organize a democratic life and to fulfill not only in the future but in the present. How best do the communities organize? Because the revolution will survive from these councils. The revolution will survive. These are the people who will undermine, who will remove the element, that element, will discipline, including the other forces, even those who are big-headed, who do not to accept that they can be subjected to democratic processes. But this council can help to preserve. And if we build them now, it will scare not only the liberals, but also the enemy, because we are already presenting an antidote of Tinkul, the element of family rule. The man is today. Umdeni ngathelo bantu yakhethwa ngachief nemvumelene naye nomdizele nemena ayovumelene nawo kuyakuniketa lo 10 votes akuniketa as 10 people bakusekhona ube MP ngoba it's a family based relationship. What we are talking about as councils is community interest. No one who serves the council has got personal ambitions must be representing the council in this council for the interest of the community, for mobilization towards change. So I think that is a critical opinion. It should be the role of the Communist Party to teach people to organize, because that's the basic framework of our role to learn. The issue of leadership, comrades, figurehead issue, comrade who presented Sanele clarified that one. It was very clear to me, though it sounded like it was not fine, but I think it got a very strategic background. He activated it probably to conceal other things that he didn't want to be exposed. But otherwise, Comrade has shared very important things. The issue of the figurehead issue in our situation is a non-starter. We talk about leadership. Leadership is the preserve of people. Marshall Slim says it's an art of the committed. If you are committed, you can exercise leadership. Those who have shown committed have exposed leadership. Our country is where it is today because of leadership, because of those who have mastered the art of commitment. You first commit yourself and then develop an art of your commitment. Commitment must lead into some activity. I think that is what we are. And in our own case, the leadership base must be broadened. That's a party rule. The leadership must be broadened. Whilst we can accept the organization of the party on the aspect of democratic centralism, but we also accept the role of independence of secondary structures on the country. Communities must have the abilities on themselves to determine how they should organize and move into that, even though we appreciate democratic centralism. And that is the key position. But it cannot work if it doesn't accept the independence and autonomy of liberties, of flexibility of the environment on the ground. So we have seen victories from that position. If it was not a teaching of the Communist Party, I would say we were not going to see what we have seen today in our country. Flexibility, we have trained and allowed comrades to go and organize revolution in the ground. And they've done it in the manner that they've done it. And to unprecedented level, the world today says, we want to learn from Swaziland how to organize revolution. As some are saying, it is a 21st century French revolution. But how was it organized? On that element, on that attitude. And we cannot move away from that. And we'll do it, and must promote it, and it must be excel in all aspects of life. Every trade union must have its own ability as an affiliate, ability to organize as the federation can do. And that is, even a branch must have the ability to organize to that magnitude. That is the way in which we want to build our organization, our society, because it must not be dry from ideas, because its livelihood must be sustained from the human current. For that matter, there is no value in a human being without that ability to lead and organize. So that is what we must promote in our own society. So in the whole course, it doesn't relegate the responsibility of the party to be involved in the leadership process. For that matter, comrades, there's not even a single member of the Central Committee of the party who has not led a revolution, a struggle from difficult conditions, very, very difficult. Even now, we are leading a revolution under difficult conditions with no protection, with nothing, but we face situations as they are, and we attend to them where they are. But what we do, we are doing it within the parameters of our discipline, of our conduct. We have allowed players to play their role. There have been players in the whole revolution to reach where we are now, to make others were playing up with the confusion, calling themselves whatsoever, doing up things. We are faced with a condition where in the parties now, truly we are determined, we will continue to pledge our role and responsibility to lead and take things forward. Yes, comrade, some will say, when you throw stones, when we did that thing, that is the primary organization level. But we also strictly say, these rallies and these activities must be organized daily, on daily basis. We are also saying the night sessions, night activities in the communities must take place, because that is where we win victory. For us, it is not populism. It is not just we say we are released. You will ask yourself, why are so much of our party members not arrested? We learn attitude and roles, how to preserve forces, because we are fighting battles every day and again. But you will know that up to now, the police is hunting our comrades day and night. They want them day and night. But you will ask them, why are they not finding them? And our comrades are harassing the enemy day and night. And that is how we are. Because at the same time, once you are involved in revolution and exercise leadership, you must know discipline, you must always organize and work things in the most proper way. But I will bring in one critical point about the issue of leadership. When the students were marching and moving up, the call for leadership was someone who will contain the students, because the outcry was about the violence at which these protests were organized, was about the revolutionary violence that we appreciated. So they wanted us to, some people to contain. And in the course, they were saying the Communist Party must go and contain the youth. No, that's not our attitude. Our duty is not to tame revolution. Our duty is to make revolution to happen. And literally, that is what we've been doing. So as people were complaining about lack of leadership, they say, hey, Nabandu, banda anything, good my leaders, good they need. The issue was they wanted people to tame the youth, because the outcry was, it was going more violent, which has troubled Mswati. And Mswati says today, this will make people, because somehow people that he has trusted failed to control the people. Maybe Mswati got it from them that hey, so I'm not bringing that for Congress to swallow it, but I'm trying to say to explain how ridiculous the condition has been in terms of when the attitude of revolution was gaining momentum, was showing the signals, people were interested in the role of the leadership by then. But I'm not denouncing that leadership is always a challenge in any circumstances of life in the revolution. Today, if we are not here discussing, the whole issue was supposed to be a game. So I do cool meal, everything was not there. But I'm saying, when the revolution needs us, wherever the position for the Communist Party comes in and say there's no space for everyone to action, you will not miss the role of the CPS thereafter when things are difficult for those who are non-communist. The Communist Party will be there to provide the situation to the last on the difficult conditions. But we are involved in the leadership process, development, training of leaders, and also taking responsibility, because the duty of the Communist Party is to lead the revolution, to give it direction, and to organize and unite the forces that for revolution. So if in any case we are unable to perform those roles, we are not only judged by the people in Swaziland alone, but we'll be judged by the circumstances of the science of revolution. I think that's the important thing. So I think that is the most important part, comrade, in this subject, not to have dealt with things in the manner that comrades might have wanted, not to have attended problem issues where comrades would have thought the aim of a political struggle in the struggle is to raise freely our opinion, debate, expose them to discussion. Some help to upgrade and appraise others' thinking. Others make others may come up with sharp contrasting views, challenging their thinking to help you to improve or upgrade the standards or explain better what we have already said. I think that is the lastly, comrade, the line of march as we stand here is that we need to run this country ungovernable under the regime. We must continue with the sabotage campaign. We must undermine the institution that represent the enemy. Institution of feudalism must be uprooted. The chief system must be removed from our communities. The representative of the monarch in the communities must be chased away, must be pushed to the corner. We need to force the members of parliament under the regime to resign, including the cabinet, because they are enablers. They are the people who make things to be difficult for us. And then we must also keep the enemy, the royal family and the political elites on toes. They must never rest, they must never sleep. There must be no night, no day for leisure and comfort. There must be no payday for them. There must be no time for rewards. So we need to keep them on the check. We need them to take special responsibility to attend to the military might of the regime and autocracy. We must undermine it, we must compromise it. It must be neutralized. We need to find an upper hand on those things. There should be no way that the regime can monopolize violence, and in particular armed violence, because we are the only people who can organize better armed resistance than the enemy can do. So there is no way that the regime, once it tries military things, can solve, it can contain our people. That's a non-starter. That must not be allowed to happen, because it has got no proximity to survive. So it is only us, because we have got the basis of organizing military insurrection, military uprising, military capabilities that the enemy can do. In numbers, we are better. In information, we are better. In organization, we are better. But moreover, in the development of art, we are better.
Where do you get the arms? Comrade was asking them. Most of the arms are with the enemy. And any small deployment of the enemy helps us to arm ourselves. Let's arm our people. And if our people are armed, they will be able to organize better the revolution. They will be able to defend themselves better. So if we don't arm our people, that's a mistake. Because an unarmed civilian, an armed people will not have the courage to fight this barbaric system that we are facing today. Thank you, comrades. I hope we will be able to meet and share again some ideas as we progress with our struggle. And it's important now that we need to keep ourselves compound together, because every day matters now, because we have seen we are in a danger, we are in a situation that requires us to pledge our utmost responsibility in action. For those who have lost their lives and for those that are hunted, those who have injured, as long as labantu labo balapha kulesimo bakiso, thina sisolo able to do our things. We don't dare to betray them and then create an arrangement that will ignore their situation. Comrade, thank you so much.
Thank you, Comrade GS. The line is clear, comrades. The time to render the country ungovernable has begun. Of course, it must be disciplined. It must be orderly. So all those institutions of the monarchy are targets. So it must be disciplined. It must be properly organized. And of course, the Communist Party is throwing its full weight to move forward. It has always been a party that has volunteered itself through its individual members who are volunteering our bodies, our minds, our intellectual capacities to the service of humanity. Use the Communist Party to its fullest, comrades. Get other people to use the Communist Party to its fullest. So thank you, Comrade GS, and thank you for everyone who contributed submissions. Comrade Chairperson of the Communist Party of Swaziland, Comrade Zweli.
Sure, thanks, Comrade International. Comrades, again, thanks so much for your time, your participation and your contribution, comrades, in this so August. Comrades, Joab has born at the developments and the reflections on the current developments after the utterances of the tyrant, comrades. So, comrades, I hope everyone has benefited a lot. Joab and I have benefited. I've learned Gakulu on what comrade has contributed. So, comrade, the Communist Party is the only party, the only organization that is capable of leading the revolution. So, comrade, let us make each and every opportunity as was articulated its ideas and leading our people and moving forward and carrying our struggle, which is the squads future intensive. So, comrade, thanks so much. Comrade Pius Pesavela actually looking, comrade, pertaining the meeting. So, comrade Sabonga, comrade, thanks so much. But not forgetting our historic mission to fight the enemy, to overthrow the regime. Thanks so much, comrade.